Chris van der Merwe, you've got a fascinating story and you're going to share it with us now. But let's start with the news first, because Curro and the decision by the Mouton family to buy Curro back from the stock market and take it private. There was a lot of publicity around that. In fact, I had a fascinating discussion with Jan Mouton on that, and he unpacked it. And many people watched that video on BizNews TV. But where are we in that process?
Yeah. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to address you, and thank you for pitching up in the graveyard session.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth. Building wealth and protecting legacies since 2004. Invest better with Brenthurst.
Alec, in 2017, I stepped down as CEO of Curro, and I took a sabbatical to Namibia in my little Land Rover, Steffi and myself. And at that stage, we had a small university company called Embry College that trained teachers. And at a particular strat session, I suggested that we scale this company into a tertiary domain. And then I came back and two things happened. Yanni called me in for a cup of tea and he said, Chris, you're still playing a glorious game of tennis, so you become the CEO of this company and you go list it. Yeah, I actually thought I had the privilege to retire.
So hang on. We're now going back to the beginning.
I want to catch there.
I want to start there later. I want to pick up with you where you are now. Is the process, is it nearly finished?
So the context is, in 2017, two things happened. I became the CEO of Stadio, but I was also appointed by Yanni on his trust.
That's Yanni Mouton.
The Yanni Mouton Trust. So that's a very good movement because we help the blind, the deaf, children homes, blah, blah, blah. Alec, we were sitting on something like, I think it was 200 million rand. That was in 2017. And last year, March, we were sitting on 8 billion cash. And
let's say that again, 8 billion with a B.
Yeah, because of the dividends of Capitec and so on. The algorithm actually performed much better than Yanni envisaged. And I was the guy that had to allocate that capital and help the country. So I'm going to keep it short now. So Jan Mouton was chairing this trust from London, and I was sitting in Stellenbosch with a family. And I said, Jan, gee, man, I'm driving my car to all these institutes. I'm using hours to scrutinize the jockeys, to look for corruption, blah, blah, blah. We can't even spend the interest on this 8 billion. Can't we do something spectacular that can help the country? So Jan said, well, it's not impossible. Weeks after that, Piet Mouton phones me. I stay in Franschhoek and he stays in Stellenbosch. So he says, Chris, you must just come and see me quickly. Rocked up at Piet's house, and Piet's got a one single sheet spreadsheet. Baie eenvoudig vir 'n onderwyser saamgestel het, ek kan verstaan. And we were sitting on 8 billion cash. The share of Curro actually went nowhere. It got kind of flat because the enrollments wasn't so aggressive anymore, but still it generated about 900 million rand cash flow. So Piet said, this is the brainwave of my brother Jan Mouton. He said the following: let's buy out the shareholders of Curro at a premium of 60%, which related to a share of a value of 13 rand, while the share sat at 8 rand. So the shareholders will be happy. Then we change it to a PBO. Then something spectacular will happen because the 600 million rand net profit that we made isn't there for the shareholders anymore. They are happy they got a premium. And that 600 million rand, in terms of the legislation for PBOs, was to be allocated to the beneficiaries in terms of SARS regulation. And that's precisely what we wanted, because now we had humongous cash flow to go build more schools. So where are we now? So this morning, at 9 o'clock, we had our first board meeting as a PBO. The new chairperson is Piet Mouton.
Sorry. Come on, that deserves at least some celebration.
Yeah. So Alec, to me, it was rather special this morning because Pete and myself, I tell you, it was tough to build 189 schools, accumulating 595 hectares of ground, building 819,000 square meters of schools since 2011. It was humongous. And Pete stood with me like this, Alec. There was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of media attacks, as you know. Pete stood with me. So I was so emancipated this morning as founder when Piet Mouton became the chairperson of this PBO. And then, of course, after an hour, I had to excuse me to arrive at your place.
But it's perfect. It's actually perfect. You're here with us today. The story has come full circle, but where did it start? Waar vandaan kom Dr. Chris van der Merwe?
I never had a dad in my life. I was raised by Tannie Frida. I had a sister. I resided in Goodwood. We never had a car in our house, Alec, but I was always excited about life. I loved school. I was never an A candidate, so I firmly had this kind of voice in me that one day life would reward action or the universe would take care of me. I still today, I believe like that. And time went on. I became a teacher. I taught in Durbanville. I did a B.Ed. I did a master's degree in curriculum consultation. I was fortunate to pass it cum laude. And then I did a doctorate under Her Majesty's Inspectorates in London and in Edinburgh, where I identified 4 determinants of excellence in schools globally. And under each determinant, call it category, in my thesis, I wrote 20 indicators. So if a principal picked up this thesis, they could just go implement this and Bob's your uncle. The school would have a decent quality. Then I obtained that at the age 34, and I, with huge enthusiasm, like Tannie Frida raised me, I applied for a job at the Western Cape Department of Education, and I got this bad letter that I wasn't successful even with my doctorate. And that evening, my wife, Stephanie, said to me, she'll look after the household. She was also a deputy principal. And with that one salary, plus my severance package, we could make it. Let's resign and let's buy a house. She would then take 20 grade 4 children, and I would take 20 grade 4 children, 1 Afrikaans, 1 English. Next year, they go on to grade 5, 6, 7, so they will have 1 teacher on a continuous basis. Beautiful model. Interesting. At 580 Rand a month school fees in 1997, that was when I experienced the impetus, I would earn 25% more than the salary of a deputy principal. So, gee, man, that was great. So it was actually the bad news that I didn't get the job that started this story, Alec.
They say when one door closes, another one opens, and sometimes it's a door to great things. When you look back, if you had got the job, it would have been a completely different story Curro would not have existed. But it's still a long way from taking 20 kids for you and Stephanie. So there's 40 in total. First of all, how did you get them? How did you get their parents to trust you?
So let me reiterate this. No man is an island. So, Alec, although I'm the founder, although it started in my study room, I will never take the full accolade in terms of that I was so good to start. I had this fascinating partner, Boetie Ungerer. He was a high school teacher in Durbanville. He was also well renowned for gifted child education. And we had a little company, we published digital material. And I went to him and I said, Boetie, yes, man, I'm a primary school teacher, grade 5, nothing more, nothing less. But you're a high school specialist. To make this thing work, we need a high school specialist. And Boetie joined me. And we didn't have money for marketing. So if you visit my house in Franschhoek and you go big, I've got 2 houses. On top, you've got Stephanie's house, and my one is in the basement where all my cars. I'm a car fanatic. So I had 2 uncles, Clive and Stanley, who taught me everything about servicing engines. So that's a hobby. So if you ever visit me in Franschhoek, you will see one original pamphlet. We had money to publish 12 pamphlets this size. We stuck them up in Jip de Jager Street in Welgemoot, and that invited parents to come and listen to our Curro that we would start. That evening, 11 o'clock, it started to rain. And as we didn't have any money to publish any other marketing material, we took it off and we stuck it on again 5 o'clock the morning. 140 people pitched. It was a rainy evening. And my friend Boetie Ungerer stood up and he said, if we get 15 enrollments this evening, we will start Curro. That was about January 1998. 15th July 1998, that year, we got hold of a premises or some classrooms at my local church from a Dominee Jan Lukeiler, and the school started with 28 children. I took the primary school children to the vestry, and Boetie Ungerer took the high school children to the moederskamer. You know what a moederskamer is? Yeah. So
En wat is 'n moederstaan?
it's where the mums with the little ones go observe the preachers.
So is it soundproof?
Yeah, it's soundproof, yeah. And I tell you, we made it.
And the name, Curro?
Yeah. So in my studies, I love the name Curro. So Curro is a Latin name which relates to a learning pathway. Let's call it a syllabus or a curriculum. So the word Curro means it relates to an athlete running at his or her own speed in his or her own lane. Comes from ancient Greece. But in didactics, it relates to I, the learner, must be allowed to run according to my own talents, attitudes, aptitudes, and skills. So to illustrate uniqueness, to illustrate each child is special, and also to illustrate that the learning method of a child in your class, there's 30 children in your class, and although I can only mediate one method at a time, you must always be aware that there might be 30 different learning styles. So Curro derived a product by means of which we can strike most of the kind of learning styles at classroom level. That's the philosophy of the name.
Fast forward to where the turbocharge came in, and
Yeah.
that was through the association with Yanni Mouton.
That's right.
How did you meet Yanni?
I just completed that paragraph in my book, so I know it off by heart, Alec. There, at a certain stage in 2009, more or less March, we had 3 offerings on the table. Advertech wanted to buy us for 70 million rand, cash offer, Alex Isicardis. I almost did the deal on the Lanseria airport with Alex. But obviously I had to go back to my board. I was shocked to get an offer of 70 million. Alec, imagine for a teacher, 70 million rand, my friend. Okay.
Yeah,
but in any case,
especially back then, you're talking crazy money.
The World Bank offered us X million, and then we could get rid of our debt, but then they would take 30% shares. That was the IFC, a lady from Nigeria, Ida Kamimia, spectacular lady. In that same week, can you remember Paladin? It was a Paladin. Yes. Francois Swart, Bernard van der Linde, blah, blah, blah. So they phoned me up and they say, Chris, we've been watching you, and Yanni Mouton is requesting a presentation in your boardroom. Would you accept it? So I accepted it. The story goes as follows. I was expecting Jannie and let's say his FD. Next moment, Alec, the whole PSG board pitched Chris Otto, Jannie Mouton, Wynand Greef, Piet Mouton, Johan Holshausen, all of them. And I think there's something to be said about explaining stuff in a simple way, so that almal kan verstaan, nee. And I explained to them, this is what we do, and this is the kind of profits that I foresee in the future. The speech was manufactured for 40 minutes. After 20 minutes, Jannie gets up. And Jannie said, Chris, I think you are worth about 100 million rand. I will write out a check for 50, and then I will take 50% shares. And by the way, if my youth league, referring to his son Piet, Wynand Greef and Johan, they were young. We were all in our 40s. If the youth league don't want to do the deal, I will do it in person. A week after that, we concluded the heads of agreement. That was about May, July. The deal was transacted.
Why him? Why did you pick him over the others? What did he say to you that shifted it?
Remember now, Ahmed, as a teacher, you don't necessarily have accountancy skills, etc. So I had to read and read and read and read to get to an understanding of how to run a business, especially when it started to scale. Because at that stage, we already had 4 big schools. It was kind of a big concern for a teacher. So I also watched Frank Thompson. Can you remember Frank from Advertech?
Yes, I do.
I watched Frank and I said, you know what? This is already our 4th school. And hey, by the way, our schools are also working in Pretoria. So if a school can work in Pretoria, manufactured by a Stormer, then surely it's a...
You got it. I'm sure there are people here who don't know the relevance, but it's the mortal enemies, the South and the North, the Blue Bulls and the Stormers.
So Alec, so I always had this idea of let's scale the concept, because otherwise you wouldn't make a dent in SA education. And I know when Jannie spoke to us that morning, he said, guys, this is a scalable business. You must think big. Next week, Piet came to us, concluded the deal by saying the following to us. This is the vision. Remember, we were 4 schools. So the vision would be to get to X number of schools, making 1 billion ZAR in revenue and making a net profit of 100 mil. In other words, the algorithm was set 10% profit of the revenue. And I like that because it pitched to my dream of scalability.
Where were the 4 schools at that stage?
The first one was Curro Durbanville. The second one was Curro Langebaan. The third one was Curro Hazeldean next to Silver Lakes. And the fourth one was Curro Roodeplaat.
So Roodeplaat, where's Roodeplaat?
Roodeplaat is somewhere in Gauteng.
Also up north. Okay. So it's up north. So we had Silver Lakes, I know, for the golf course. So that's Pretoria.
Yeah, more or less.
2 in Pretoria, 2 near Cape Town. 4 schools. How many scholars in each?
We had about 600 in Curro Durbanville. We had about 250 in Curro Langebaan. Curro Hazeldean had about 300, and the Roodeplaat was a startup. It was only the foundations were built when we did the deal with Jannie.
So this had taken you roughly 10 years?
The first single school took us from 1998 to 2007. Langebaan was built in 2007, Hazeldean 2008, and Roodeplaat the next year.
So it's a slow burn, slow build up. What made you feel ready to put the 50 million in your bank and to accelerate the plan?
Okay, so the 50 million didn't come to the couple of teachers that started it. They gave us a part of it, but most was used to kill the debt. And interesting, that thing called gearing. When the debt vanished, the bankers stood queue to come and fund us because they looked at Curro as a property company. They said, you are building a school and you are renting 3 square meters. That's the area where the child sits at rate X. And that's what they loved. Up to today, the bankers look at the algorithm like that. So that is how it happened, Alec.
And how did you find, or how did you select the properties, if it is a property company in their minds?
Yeah. So, Alec, when I was a teacher, the only way to actually enhance your balance sheet in my world was to build houses and then to sell it and to then register a bigger bond. So between Steffi and myself at that stage, we have already built about 6 houses, built and sell. I was an owner builder. So I understood property quite well. So I derived the following criteria. If you want to make a school successful, the earth that you buy had to be flat because there was no money for civil works. Number 2, we couldn't pay more than 1 million rand per hectare. Number 3, there had to be streets to carry the children from the houses to the school. And of course, number 4, there had to be houses with children.
So there were these 4 criteria,
yeah.
which makes it quite simple, but to implement it, to find the right properties, would not have been presumably that easy.
So I literally flew to Joburg, rented an Avis car with my fellow partners, took the engineer with, and then we scouted. We looked for boards where developments was, because remember, the state didn't build any new schools in areas that were developed. And that was the niche. We targeted areas where they built new houses. And then it was easy because you got the number, you went to the developer and you made a deal with the developer.
Okay, so let's get back to Yanni Mouton now. And how was he different? How was he able to help you to turbocharge this dream, or maybe even to give you the dream to go from 4 to 200?
So, Alec, let me just give you the practical version. So when they married us, once again, Yanni actually liked me because I was a teacher. I was nothing fancy. And he loved the fact that to manage, it sounds bizarre, but to manage a school company is actually not that difficult. It's not chemical engineering. It's just a simple algorithm. Make sure you've got a very good principal. Make sure you've got good teachers. Make sure the ethics is right. Make sure the written curriculum is right. Bob's your uncle. So Yanni actually liked me. And when we did the deal, Yanni called me for a cup of tea and he said, Chris, you're a teacher. The numbers are going to get big. I'm going to send Bernard to you. I'm going to ring fence you. I'm going to take the stress of financial management. At that stage, Steffi and myself did the accountancy. Luckily, I got a C matric for accountancy, so I could help myself. And Bernard, then I had the luxury of having a CA. But there was something that happened before the Mouton engagement. So Koos Becker invited me to the Naspers building in 2005. Let's cut the detail. Koos bought 20% of Curro, helped through Educor, helped me to formulate a vision of creating 20 schools, helped me with his data specialist to find the places best suited. So when Yanni did the deal, I already had that. Then Yanni phoned me one morning. That was a beautiful deal because I got hold of Andries Greiling, the FD of Educor. So I was actually at that stage surrounded with CAs, which was a luxury. So Alec, at that stage, Bernard came to sit next to me. I had Andries, a CA. I had Bernard, a CA coming from PSG, and Henny Lowe, the ex-CEO of Educor, was my third CA. So I called them in one morning and I said, Kerels, ons gaan hierdie maatskappy lys. We are going to list this one. They said, Chris, we're not even making 4 million profit. And ek sê, ons gaan hom lys. So they said, just hang 10 for 3 years. Right. I went to sleep that evening. The following morning, I said to Bernard was a journalist at Finansies en Techniek, and he was Jannie's assistant. So I said, Bernie, the following day, let's just go test this with Jannie, man. This thing bothers me. I had a little black Z4. I love the car. And we went to Jannie. Alec, it was 10 minutes. And Jannie said, Chris, you are allowed to list it on the Alt-X, because the Alt-X didn't even want it guaranteed profit. They wanted a guaranteed forecast. By the way, can I just, I'm sure I'm going to entertain the audience now. So when you list a company, so that was how it happened. When you listed a company, you do an IPO, initial public offering. So then you go on a roadshow because you must defend your anticipated opening share. And we thought it's going to be about R4. Yeah, Alec, I was proud. The teacher's going to list the company. My gosh, man. On the airplane, you know a chap called David Shapiro.
Of course.
Right. So our first innings, remember, I'm a rookie. I don't know anything about shares. I don't know anything, but I've got Bernard. Okay. So David sits at Sasfin. He's at Sasfin. And with a lot of analysts. And they say, so David Shapiro says, Chris, you are going to grow by numbers, but that's not going to be enough to give the shareholder return. You'll have to do something aggressive. Have you thought of other growth strategies? So I said, of course, David, we will do a lot of acquisitions. I said, I tell you, I already have 5 acquisitions in the offing. And David, I can tell you exactly where they are. Here is the heads of agreement. I've got this acquisition. It's a great one. And this...
That sounds like it's from Jannie's roots, his vocabulary book. Because he would have said something like that.
Yeah. So I tell you, so I see Bernard pumping me in the ribs. And I go out, I leave, ek sê, Bernard, dit het eintlik goed gegaan. David glo in hierdie storie. Hy sê, Chris, it's acquisitions, my friend.
So julle het Afrikaans gepraat daar in die kantoor?
Ja.
Yeah, okay. That does not surprise me. But then
I spoke English to the parents, however.
But just to go back a little, at the time that Jannie Mouton became your partner, he already had quite a track record.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can just share with the tribe here what he had done by that stage.
Oh yes, no, look, Jannie was at a company called, help me quickly, Senekal?
Mouton and Kitsoff.
Yes. And then the story goes like this. So they called in Jannie and they fired Jannie. And Jannie actually knew GT Ferreira from Joburg. So GT told Jannie, you can't go and sit and do nothing. If you move to Stellenbosch with me, but just go to an office. Just pack your case and go to an office. Don't do nothing at home. That's a true story, by the way. And Jannie and Piet then bought a company. I'm not sure about the name. I think it was something like Arch Capital, but go check me. But they bought a company for X million, and within a year, they sold it for a huge profit. So Jannie's office started to work successfully. And then I think his biggest breakthrough came when he initiated a concept where they would buy out the guys that loaned money in the informal sector, and they created Capitec. So Jannie was a huge drive force behind the creation of Capitec. I think that was his biggest accolade.
I can remember talking to him at the time, and he said to me, you would be another Capitec.
Yes.
He saw the same vision for Curro as he saw in Capitec. And it has been quite a ride. Just take us through the progress from those 4 and how quickly you started adding schools.
So it was an amazing journey, Alec. I had to get used to shares. I had to study fast. Again, the CAs helped me. I had one competitive edge. I could speak in a simplified manner. By the way, I'm going to test your memory quickly. 2012, Alec Hawk speaks to Chrissy van der Merwe on the radio. Your introduction is as follows. Chris, aren't you scared? Your share price ran from 7 Rand to 13 Rand and your PE is standing at almost 200. Ek sê, Alec, what do you mean? It's nice to have a PE of 200. You can go check me out. But in any case, so I had to learn about these things, but I slowly but surely I matured. Alec, in 2013 or 2014, we built 17 new schools in 1 year. Can you imagine that? Now, as remember, it's humongous schools. It's schools that carries 1,500 kids. You've got to go market the schools. You've got to appoint the engineers. You've got to do quality control. You've got to do cash flow management. I had to report in the PSG Raadsaal boardroom. It was okay. So it scaled incredibly up to a point where in 2016 we were awarded the third best place in the top 100 companies competition, where we gave the shareholders, listen to this acronym, a KGAR. Compound growth
average
of
growth rate.
48.35% 5 years consecutively.
That's
So I was
extraordinary.
very proud. And Alec, then, can you remember the day that Pravin Gordon was fired? The next week, we saw how, I want to put it positively, how suddenly the numbers of Curro, more or less 2016-17.
It was 2015, December the 15th, I think it
Okay.
was.
More or less there. Up to 2016. But when we hit 2017, the ripple effect of that caught us. And the school's numbers didn't climb with, let's say, 10 to 20%.
Sorry, my apologies. That was when Nene was fired, was 2015. So it would have been 2016.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I can remember.
Sorry.
We were on the pinnacle. I was busy handing over the company to Andries Greiling that succeeded me. And then suddenly the numbers just plateaued because of the economy in South Africa. We had intelligent researchers that looked why it couldn't have been one single CEO that was so good. Forget that. Because the CAs are smart people. They are data orientated. So the economy definitely, look, we escalated school fees with 10% upon 10%. And at a certain stage, we still did fine, but it kind of plateaued. So where are we today? We built enough capacity to accommodate 100,000 kids. It's already built, and we're sitting at 72,000 kids. So
just stop a little bit. 72,000 kids. You go to Ellis Park, you watch the Springboks play the All Blacks in the World Cup final, and it's 63,000.
Yeah.
So it's all those people,
Yeah.
plus a few waiting outside. That's an enormous number of human beings
and then we must
that are
add,
in your schools.
and then we must add Stadio, but that's a topic for a bit later.
But my point is, how does it make you feel when you think what you started at your home is now educating that many people?
It's humbling, Alec. It's humbling because if you really know me, I got 1A in matric, and that was because of a great teacher. And when I got that A for history, 388 out of 400, as a 15-year-old child in grade 10, standard 8, that gave me confidence. Now, every time I look at the stats and I have a glass of wine with Stephanie, the feeling is it's just too good to be true because I know where I was at age 15. I was a cricketer. I was never an academic. So, Alec, it's humbling. It's also just so inspiring to have the luxury of, because you must remember, I started Curro with Boetie Ungerer. Who was Boetie Ungerer? He was my co-examiner of my master's degree. Then Thys Franken, Eddie Conradi phoned me. He was my inspector of education. I was 12 years their junior. And then Thys Franken phoned me. He was the director at the Western Cape Education Department on Human Resources. Moments after Eddie phoned me, Thys phoned me. 6 months after we started Curro, I still called them meneer, because they were my meneer. They gave me my first teaching job in the state sector. So, Alec, it's humbling.
And what was it that you were doing at Curro that parents were prepared to pay rather than go to the government school, which was their only option previously?
Okay, Alex, so I'm gonna own my success now, but please don't think I'm arrogant. So I sat with a qualification that was incredibly scarce. I knew how teaching in a London school happened. I did my empirical study there. I knew Eton. I knew Edinburgh. I knew Enschede in the east of Netherlands. These were the top line centers when X-Model C schools flourished. So I was on top of my game. I was also a fairly popular teacher in Durbanville. The parent community knew me, and they knew Boetie, they knew Thys, and they knew Eddie. We all taught there, and my partners were all not Boetie, but Thys and Eddie were headmasters. So we came with some accolades. So whenever we made speeches, we had the right terminology, we had the passion, and we had the fuzzbait. And parents didn't care whether we didn't have an AstroTurf or a heated pool or A-team rugby that could compete. They wanted top-line education at classroom level.
And Koos Becker was your partner earlier on, and there's some parallels here.
Yep.
Because when he was at Columbia, he learned all about satellite TV.
Yep.
And he brought it back to South Africa and started Mnet. And that was the beginning of his success story. So he'd done his research in the same way as you did your research. So maybe that was what he really liked about you.
Koos is a very intelligent chap. He knows about everything.
Yeah.
And when I sat with him, he discussed my studies and my understanding of education. And then he delegated this to Educor because, Educor came to visit me, but ultimately Koos had to sign it off through Media 24, which was governed by Hein Brandt in those days. But what I didn't tell the audience, I was so emancipated when a chap called Koos Becker took a stake in Curro, extremely proud. And then Koos phoned me one morning and he said, "Gee, Chris, I've got very bad news for you." Okay, the call actually came through Hein Brandt. Hein said Koos did this bizarre deal with a company called 10 Cents. And he wants to sell off all the small little companies that clashes with the era of digital gaming, blah, blah, blah. But it just shows you the great guy that Koos and company was. He helped us to actually build Rodeplaat. He helped us to get to the 4th school. Remember, this happened in 25. He came back to me and he said, "I'm going to do you a deal. Go to your partners and see if they are willing to give their cash back, because they have an opportunity to buy their shares back at the same price when you were only 1.5 schools." It was the most difficult check of 650,000 Rand that I, as a teacher, had to go withdraw out of my ABSA account for 1%. That 1% later became almost 300 million Rand.
What a story. Well, we're coming close to the end now, but there are two things I'd like you to leave us with. Your story is inspirational. It has to be. where you came from, what you've created. What would you pass on to entrepreneurs in the audience who may be trying to scale their business? And the second question for your subconscious is what you would say to that 15-year-old, your 15-year-old self, if you could go back today. So let's start with the entrepreneur.
Everything starts small. Everything starts small. It's like you're climbing a lot of steps. You get on the first step, you can only see a small little vision. You enroll your next 30 kids, you get onto step 2. The vision gets a bit broader. Ultimately, when you gain height, by the way, through hard work and believing in yourself, back yourself. But as you climb the stairs, your vision expands. It cannot happen otherwise, Alec. You've got to start from the first step. So your aim must just be to get to the second step. Just get to the second step. That's my advice to entrepreneurs.
So you don't have a grand plan. You don't have the plan, we're going to have 150 schools. We're just going to open one school at a time.
That's how it happened because, so by the way, I built that first school with my blue overall, 30 laborers, 10 bricklayers, 1 plumber, 1 electrician, and an engineer for 876 Rand a square meter in 1999. That was my first step. And as I was building this monster, remember my friends taught in the church, I said, sure, Chris, how are you going to fill the school? I had to report to my banker on a weekly basis. Even if I enrolled 1 new kid, I went to Ernst Esterhuizen from Absa and I said, ek het nog 'n kind gekry. Step by step by step.
And your 15-year-old self, if you could go back and advise him?
Okay. I can remember why I got an A. Remember, I didn't have a dad. So Frans de Toey brought discipline into my life. Some of the previous authors said something about the magic of using colors for optimal learning. And Frans made us sum up that whole textbook with a green pen, a red pen, and a blue pen. And I stuck to that recipe up to varsity days. So it was so great for me to get that A, to prove to myself. But there was always a price to pay. It's called diligence, spend the hours, have a plan, and believe in yourself. But spend hours with studying because it's not just going to come for free.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth, South Africa's leading boutique wealth manager. Trusted to guide families for over 20 years. Invest better with Brenthurst.